that a friend of mine, Jones Jobo, says. He says, think globally, but you act locally. We can see in Cameroon, Paul Biya is about to go for another election. He's 92. That is, even just hearing it, how is he even gonna run for the election? So many of these things, these are institutions that have been interested in gerontocracy, and if only we can encourage our youth to go for these grassroots positions. I mean, things like local government chairman, councillor, these are, area councils, all these type of things. These are things that are accessible to us and then can create some form of level where we have a voice and then we can rise to the occasion.
So, NSAS proved the ability for young people to mobilize and influence, right? Policies and change policies. It was very clear, but there was something about NSAS. It was the ability for young people to unite, right? But
yes,
a huge problem with NSAS was the fact that there was a strong absence, right, of sustainable offline actions, right? Because again, no matter how strong the movement is, the online thing, we're shouting, we're doing everything, if there are no real things happening, right, and at the corridors of power where it matters. There's somebody that I love a lot. I follow him, Randy Peters. He's been going to the National Assembly, right? You see that now there's a lot of wisdom around. It's not just shouting on social media, but now going to the corridors of power where it matters to then, influence things at that level. That offline transaction, because you touched a little bit on it when you said that us taking on positions of, leadership positions at grassroots level. That is one of the strongest power that anybody can possess when you capture power at the grassroots level. But how informed are young people of this superpower? How well informed are they?
I genuinely can't speak on my generation in that regard, and I think it is not our fault. I think our political climate and a lot of the things that we see day to day make it seem impossible or make us feel as though there is no point to any of it. But, as things progress and as life moves on, I think more of us are going to come out and show that we can do it. I know if anybody, I can speak for myself. I am completely interested and I am open to it, and I'm excited for the future of Nigeria and Nigeria's politics.
So this is you are just one person, right? The question I'm driving at is political literacy, right?
Okay.
And the skills that are involved. Because again, right, it is not just enough for us to shout. We need to be intentional about civic and political education. And it must go beyond just social media. You must be intentional about understanding how the power blocks work, right? And how to position yourself to become a power block. We already have it in terms of the voting block, right? But how we are able to translate that voting block into real leadership power is where that gap is, and that is what is missing. So how do we bridge that gap?
The educational gap, quite frankly, that might take a while, because this generation, most of us are chasing after our long-term goals. The economic hardship is pushing everyone to kind of relegate that and put that in the background. But I think there are different ways, different forms of awareness that people can try. Like, and I know that I am just one person, but I love to believe that I am a perfect example, because this time last year, you would never see me on a podcast like this. or a channel like this, you would never see me here if not for people like you know, Peter Obi, prominent people that would encourage youth to kind of take up these kind of conversations, topics, things that make, you know, people think. Channels like yours, people like you also push other people to want to be in these corridors of power. Exactly what I'm saying. So yeah, I think definitely through media, through social media, metadata, you know, just general advocacy and awareness to push the interest, let people want to do it, because at the end of the day, it's all about the drive and who you are inside. And I think the more we push and the more we encourage people to know and learn about the power systems that are basically helping their life and can make or break them. I think once we sort that out, I'm sure we'll be fine.
We'll be fine. So I like the fact that you are completely honest here, because again, you know, you kind of just help to push me in the next conversation that I was or the next point I was trying to drive. Because you see, one of the strongest things that I have observed amongst young people, conversations like this don't matter to them. They are more interested in what is happening in somebody else's life, who the person is dating or who is the person not dating, the amount of money in that person's account. I'm just saying that when it comes to conversations around governance, leadership, policies, right, you would rarely find young people being interested in those conversations. And unfortunately, if we are not intentional about, you know, training our minds to begin to intentionally consume those information, it's going to be very difficult for anything meaningful to come out of the Gen Z generation. Right? Because yes, we are very quick to create organized movement. What Ray did was almost like a 30-day rant. It's an organized movement online, right? A trend. But look at it, it's short-lived, because after that 30-day rant, what has happened? Nothing. Right? Because if you really want to have sustainable impact, it would require a well-structured structured organization with clearly defined goals and strategies, you know, that would help. But all of those things are the missing link that I don't see happening. And I am happy that you're saying this, that something also woke you up internally. So how do we get more young people to start to become more interested in things like this? Because yes, we might like the trends, do the TikTok trend, the this trend, the that trend. But in the end, after all those trends, it is the policymakers that will determine whether our lives will be miserable or our lives will be good as Nigerian citizens. So how do we get young people to be more interested and engaged in the issues that matter?
I think lately there have been some people that do mentorship programs and make incentives for people to actually care about things like this. Because I am a law student, so I can only speak in that regard. People like Banwo Ighodalo, banks, you know, they make it their corporate responsibility to do mentorship programs to help people to understand that, you know, not only is it your right to run for these kind of things, it's your responsibility. Somebody has to do it. If not, the gerontocracy and the toxic system is gonna stay there forever. So yeah, I mean, and that brings me back to my first point. The government has to help. The government has to be involved. People like Tony and Lumelu, they need to make it their corporate responsibility, because you know we don't make a Tony Elumelu every day. We have to make Tony Elumelu's every day so that we are able
Crystal,
to
you know,
come out of this
I
problem.
admire your positivity, and I admire your
I mean,
innocence. You know, I say admire your innocence Because,
Fair enough.
you know, where your mind is at, you're thinking the ideal. Because in your head, we should have 10 million Dangotes. You understand? We should have 10 million Elumelus. But what gives you the...
That's not what I'm. That's
No,
not
no,
what I
no, no.
mean.
No, the point I'm
That's not what
trying
I
to
mean.
drive at,
That's not what I mean.
what makes you think that the government is interested in creating more Tony Lumelus? That's the question I'm asking.
The truth is, they have no. I genuinely feel like, and I understand what you mean by they may not necessarily be interested in creating more leaders, but I don't think that is entirely true. And I also don't think it's entirely up to them. There are a lot of people, especially in the diaspora, that I know that are gearing up for these leadership roles and are going to come through and help us. I know a lot of, and I can only speak for myself, at the end of the day. And I wanna be able to say that I know a couple of people that are coming through and you won't be disappointed.
No, so the reason I challenged that was because when you said the government needs to help, that line has to be expunged because if you look at the structure of the Nigerian government right now, a lot of things are weaponized. The fact that we are not politically literate is a weapon for them, right? The fact that
That
we
is
are
true.
also, poor is a weapon for them. Ill education or zero education is a weapon for them. So, the government will never be part of those people, right? Except maybe by some stroke of miracle, something changed. That is when you can now find the government truly being intentional about educating, the public. Because it is only a well-educated mind that would understand that if I collect a bribe from this person, I am selling 4 years of my life, I'm selling 8 years of my life. You think they would want that? They will not want that,
No.
definitely. Because again, it is intentional for people to remain politically illiterate, for there to be a lot of voter apathy, for us to have a lot of poverty, so that when they say jump, you just ask how high. You're not questioning anything. It is the enlightened mind that can question some of the policies, some of the actions of government. But when the mind is not enlightened, anything goes, right? So it was the line where you said the government needs to step in that I'm saying to you that I don't think the government will truly want to change anything. But what you now said about people in diaspora and different people coming into the picture, maybe that can truly work. But let's go on a break. When we come back from that break, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
All right, thanks for staying tuned. Now, if you just tuned into this discussion centers on beyond the hashtags and what will it take for Gen Zs to lead Nigeria. Now, please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join this conversation, send us an SMS, a WhatsApp, leave us a YouTube message. WhatsApp number is 081-803-84663. Our phone lines are also open, 07025007749. or 0701424240. Let's hear what you have to say. All right, so I still have my guests with me. Are you there? Confirm that you are there.
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Okay,
here.
yeah, Chisom, yeah. So now I wanted to touch a little bit on where our strength is strongest as Gen Zs, technology, right? Technology is one of our biggest strengths, and I think again one of the things that made a lot
Yes.
of young people come out for the 2023 general elections was the promise of what's it called, electronic transfer of results, like leveraging technology to be able to drive a credible election, right? How are we intentional, or what are we doing differently or strategically, in leveraging technology to lead in today's world in Nigeria? How are we doing things differently, or what should we be doing in terms of leveraging technology?
Well, I think a lot of the things that we do are data driven, and a lot of things in Nigeria are not exactly data driven. We don't exactly use numbers. People just throw words into the air and it seems to be what goes. But if we are able to track these things, these numbers that so dearly affect us and clearly affect us, then I believe that technology will definitely be utilized quicker and more efficiently for our benefit.
Because when you say data, I'm just thinking in my head, one of the biggest challenge that we have in this country is our population. We really have not yet said this is exactly, the number of human heads that we have here in this country. Like literally just putting it in plain terms, right? And I
Yes,
don't, I,
exactly. That's
I
what I
don't
meant.
understand why population, knowing our numbers is a problem. But again, when you go back to what I said initially about how our political class have weaponized a lot of things, not knowing our numbers, right, is also one of the weapons that politicians use so that they can easily inflate figures, right, during elections to say, oh, 10 billion people voted. Meanwhile, maybe it's just 100 million or 100 or 1 million people that that came out to actually vote. So I'm just thinking in my head, because we're a generation that is very pro technology, it would be nice for us to start to think about creative ways to leverage technology. If the government is not intentional about tracking authenticity, transparency, especially during our our elections and all of that, maybe there's a way Gen Zs can leverage technology. We tried to do that in 2023. I was very impressed. I would not lie to you, because I mean, one polling unit, we stayed up till 5 a.m., 6 a.m. before we left, like from the previous day, 6 a.m., until they were done counting and all of that. And I see how a lot of young people, they were just turning 18, 19, and they were tweeting, taking screenshots of the ballot sheets and all of that. Yet a lot of things still went wrong in terms of but let's not go too deep on that. That is old news. The point is, what is the strategy that we
Yeah.
should be looking at in terms of going forward, and how we can then leverage technology to really fight some of the challenges, which is number one, which is transparency and accountability in our electoral processes. How do you think we can leverage technology on that?
I think in 2019, I remember I got my BVN. I have always wondered my BVN and my NIN number, and I've always wondered what those things were for. In America, people can use anything to identify and show that I am a citizen and I have a right to vote. I have never understood the need for a personal voter's card. I think it is silly, in my opinion, that I need to show again that I am a Nigerian and I know I'm supposed to be voting and I have a right to vote. That is, just by the way. I also think that things like now, a bank like OPay, every youth, I don't think that there is any youth that doesn't have an OPay account. I think it is something that we can also leverage to be able to understand our numbers properly so as to be able to help. Sorry, if you could just give me a moment.
That's interesting. I like where he's driving at in terms of young people leveraging on that what I call it data collation instead of waiting for the government to get that data for us. That makes a lot of sense. Because imagine if, let's say, we have 10 million people or 100 million people on these mobile banking apps and all of that, and there's a way to communicate in that ecosystem.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
they literally have our information. They know everyone that is 18 to 30, 45 to 50, and thereabout. And anybody that is 18 and above can vote. All these people can come together and we can have an understanding. Like something now like the delegate votes. Delegate voting is basically impossible for, someone like me or another youth to be able to transcend something like that. If we are able to come together and all understand ourselves, crowdfunding
About
shouldn't be an
delegates.
issue.
Speaking about delegates, Chisom, I think with delegates, right, a lot of young people need to go and register into political parties, because if we have the numbers, it is easy because it is those people that eventually vote who would represent the party and what ticket is given to who. Do you understand? So at that level, at party level, we need more people getting into political parties, so you become a delegate, you're voting. Because truth be told, how many young people can afford to give people hard currencies in FX, right? You're giving dollars and all of that in envelopes, and for delegates to be able to, because that's what happens at the party level, and that's why some candidates emerge as
Brazenly as well.
as
They are
flag
proud of
bearers.
it.
Yeah.
Like they are brazen about the bribery and it's shameful.
It's shameful. And I like the idea of, so how do we even push that? Because honestly, if you have your BVN and you have your NIN, that is enough identification that you're a Nigerian and you should be eligible to
Honestly.
vote. Because the issue around having to go and get a voter's card again, is just a lot. I wish we can get to that point where our data is just synchronized, right? So it is all consolidated. So you are eligible to vote. It's just one identification that can help you do multiple things, as opposed to having so many things. Because even the process of getting those voters cards and all of that, can be so stressful. And again, we saw videos in the 2023 elections where thousands of voters' cards were seen in bushes, thrown in the...
Exactly. In the gutters.
Yeah, it's just sad.
In the gutters. I stood in line for hours to try to get my PVC, and I genuinely, at some point, I just gave up. I just gave up after I saw the picture of thousands of people's voters' cards thrown into the gutter. It was very sad to see.
Yes, that's really sad. So, I mean, as we continue to understand what it will take for Gen Zs to lead Nigeria, I want us to break down some points that I think we've already touched on, just to recap them. And when we talk about authenticity and transparency, because again, if you look at the Gen Zs, the younger generation, they value some level of genuineness, and they can also spot insincerity. So, and that's why it was very easy for young people to gravitate towards the likes of a Peter Obi, for instance, because they could resonate with his authenticity. They could relate with his you know how they say stain your white? His white is not stained, because I'm sure that if Peter Obi had any dirt on him, I'm sure it would have been brought out, because he really he shook the entire political scene in 2023. Nobody thought somebody like that would just wake up and all of a sudden he's on the lips of every young person, and still tomorrow he's still wielding that support, right? So if we look at the fact that Gen Zs are authentic, they can be intentional about transparency, right? Do you think that if Gen Zs are given the opportunity to lead, how well do you think they will do? And be very conscious when you're answering this question, because again, some young people have disappointed us several times. But how well do you think the current crop of people that we categorize as Gen Zs, how well do you think they will do if given the opportunity to lead?
Well, I think, again, as soon as we are able to get into these positions, it would then be a thing of, oversight. All eyes are going to be on you anyway. You are going to have to do the job. You have to do the job. You either do the job or you're out. That is I believe that is my position. And there is no time to waste. There's no dilly-dallying. There is no being anyone's friend. Once we see that you are not able to do the job, then you no longer, I don't think you would have anyone's support. And I don't want to make any loaded statements because, as you said, a lot of, youths that have even been given the chance have still disappointed us. But that is, by the way, the truth is that we are human beings. Human beings innately are always something is always gonna happen in that regard. But with more oversight and more people that are looking over, more people looking over your shoulder, more people interested in you not messing up, I think that is what's gonna be able to push us and help us.
Okay, so, and it's also our ability
Like,
for you to submit
media outlets like you.
It's also the ability for you to submit yourself to be accountable to someone. Because sometimes it's not just saying, I'm pushing you. You also need to be willing, to want to submit to accountability. Do you get the point? But I want to touch a little bit on vision, because one of the biggest things that I see that we lack is the fact that we do not have clear visions of what we want, right? Even though Gen Z, right, they're driven by a lot of meaningful work, and they actually like leaders who align with their personal values, right? How are we able to start to articulate a clear vision of what we want as a Nigeria and communicate that to the people that are the current political class? How do we start to do that? Because again, the call out that you see some people go on social media to call out leaders, that is just them trying to say we can do better. But I feel like we are not communicating it well. So how do we intentionally craft a clear message, a clear vision that says this is the Nigeria that we want, and communicate it to the people that matter?
Well, in my opinion, as of right now, it's going to be a bit difficult. But I think, and I love the term that you used, vision, we need to create a completely new vision or a completely new idea what it means to be a Nigerian. From the beginning, from the primary schools, from the secondary schools shouldn't be teaching, or gearing the kids up to leave. Once you're done with SS2, you're going to go and write SATs or IGCSE. All that is just so that you can leave the country. It shouldn't be so anymore. We need to reimagine. Like, look at China. China, after years of destruction under Chairman Mao, they came together, they reimagined their entire philosophy based on minimalism, industrialism, hard work, politeness. And look, they have swept past the entire world. They have, America is watching their back. Look at Japan, look at Italy, all these people. We are at the end of the day, we are the giant of Africa. And I believe that if we come from the beginning again and just start to teach people that it is not so bad to be a Nigerian, it is not so bad to be intelligent as a Nigerian, your voice, be proud of it, be proud of who you are. I think if we push that vision from the grassroots, from the little kids to the secondary schools, to the student union, governments, things like that will certainly help. And for sure, once it then becomes, because as a I like to call Rafai Oseni. He says culture will always eat strategy for breakfast. Always. It doesn't matter the strategy that you come up with. Culture will always, and that is why we don't queue. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to deviate. But yeah, like if we make it a culture to just be a good Nigerian, a smart Nigerian, I think we'll be okay. I'm sure in the next maybe 10, 20 years, I'm sure we'll be okay.
I think so too. But I think um, attitudinal change, we all need to be intentional about that. So I have a coach,
Mm-hmm.
Olakule Shorian, that always gives this analogy when we complain about our leaders. And he says, Uwa, you have a basket of rotten eggs. And every 4 years, you go to pick one egg to say, be our leader. And when the egg starts to exhibit the traits of rottenness, you'll be complaining. But we changed the egg, So should we not rethink the basket where all the pool of rotten eggs are to say probably let's change the entire basket and get, fresh eggs,
Get a
that
new
are
set of
healthy?
eggs.
So it is the attitudinal change that we require for us to be able to move forward as a country. If you had the final thoughts, as I let you go, what would that be to your young people, your fellow young people? I love what you're doing, by the way. And what positions are you looking to run for? So let's just have that in view
Yeah.
and follow you up.
Well, that is pending. I need to pass my bar exams before I can say before I can say anything in that regard. But yeah, watch out. That's all I can say. Watch out.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, Chisom, for your time. All right. So for all the young people, right, I want to say that commit to continuous learning on governance, leadership, and policy making. You have to commit to continuous learning. You cannot feign ignorance. Ignorance is not an excuse, right? You also need to be intentional about translating your advocacy into political participation. And political participation would mean that you have a voter's card that you can vote. You also have a political party that you have pegged to join, or you can even form your own political party, right? If you're going to be allowed to register it officially. But you must translate that advocacy into political participation. You must also keep demanding accountability from elected leaders through constant engagement and follow-ups. So that is, you are monitoring them. I think EIE has a platform, Budget has a platform. Monitor what they're doing. Follow the money. Is it being implemented properly? If it's not, all of those things are how you can hold the elected officials accountable. So as I said, the platforms like shineyoureye.org, to find your representatives and engage with them. I think that's the platform that EIE created. Follow those platforms, it helps. You must also support young people like Chisom, young people like we have someone within our team here, Okiki, who want to take up leadership position for government. Support them, right? You have to be intentional about creating enabling environment for young people to participate in in politics and governance by your support. And also the government must also do this. And the government must reduce all those barriers for young candidates through campaign financing reforms. So all this 100 million form, all of those things have to stop. We must engage young people in policy formulation through youth council and advisory board. Of course, civil society, they're already doing their job. Invest more in youth leadership programs, provide platforms for intergenerational dialogue and mentorship. You must also support tech-driven governance solution from young entrepreneurs. So, Nigeria's youth, right, or young people have the passion, they have the numbers, we have the tools, to redefine the nation's leadership landscape. But you see, hashtags alone will not transform the country. Leadership requires structure, it requires consistency, it requires a willingness to work within and where necessary reform political systems. By moving from viral movements to strategic movements, young people can go beyond being louder voices online to becoming architects of Nigeria's future. So again, the time to step up is now. And I'll say again, thank you to Enough is Enough for the great job that you're doing. And thank you to our guests for joining us tonight. Thank you to you for watching. And please share these links, to the people that need to watch it. Every young person needs to see this show. Invite families and friends to watch and engage, The more we keep talking about these things, the more we'll get far. So if you missed our quote from Obi Ezekwesili, it says, "The young have fully now grown and taken over the fight of office of the citizen." So I'll see you guys tomorrow, 8 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your evening.